Welcome to Weight Loss and Wellness for Real, the podcast where people like you get the practical solutions and support you need to permanently lose the physical and mental weight so you can feel better and live the life you want in the body and mind you want. If you're looking to overcome your stress eating, overeating, binging behaviors, and move to a place of freedom with food and your body, you're in the right place. Just a reminder that this podcast represents my own opinions. The content here should not be taken as medical advice. The content here is for educational and informational purposes only. Please consult your doctor or healthcare professional for any individual medical questions you may have. Hello, everybody. I hope all of you had a wonderful holiday season. It is a couple days after Christmas 2020 as I'm recording this. And although I guess the holiday season is not quite over yet, as New Year's Eve and New Year's Day is still on the way, I wanted to record this now because this is a time where I think most of us start thinking about New Year's goals. And of course, for many of us, this will include things like weight loss and getting healthy in the new year. And this is always an interesting week as I'm checking in on clients as well, because it is kind of a time where, and I kind of get into this mentality too, although I've worked on it over the years, but this week is sort of a time where it's almost like for many of us, it's one big last hurrah. And it's like, up until New Year's Eve, or maybe even the first Monday of January, which this year would be January 4th. So actually there's going to be, it's not like we're just going to get strict with ourselves January 1st to start, eating properly or not over drinking or whatever it is, or getting healthy. But many of us will probably give ourselves until January 4th, which is Monday this year, before we start implementing these things. And so it's kind of like we have this full week with this mindset of, well, I'm going to start everything in January. And so this is kind of a free-for-all and let's just live it up and all those things. And, I'm not trying to rain on anybody's parade here, but, this is just something to maybe consider as I go through this podcast where I'm actually going to be talking about self-accountability and how to cultivate that so that you can stick with your New Year's goals and resolutions and all those things. But this is just something to consider that maybe this week, instead of the free-for-all, like over-the-top eating, drinking, because, you're kind of setting these more stringent goals for yourself in the new year, maybe just to consider using this week to kind of at least not have the free-for-all, maybe allowing some things in there, but thinking of it more as this transition week between the holiday season and then moving into this new goal setting new year of 2021 as I'm recording this. Okay, so, what I see happen a lot is that most of us have this sort of fall and winter time where eating habits kind of get what I would call a little bit out of control, and maybe not for all of us, but for a lot of us. And, typically I always was thinking the holiday season kind of lasts from Thanksgiving until January 1st, but truly these days I see it lasting from Halloween. So, it's like we have these 2.5 months of where there's a lot of overeating and over drinking. And not all of that is bad. I'm a little bit into, I do believe the fall and winter is a time where, if you're sort of in tune with the seasons and all of that, you probably are going to put on an extra pound or a few. But what you don't want to do is have that accumulate over years and years and years, because that's kind of as we age, how we end up putting some more weight on. Okay, so we have this long sort of few months of overeating, over drinking, and then, many will say, okay, so now New Year's is coming. I'm setting these new goals. I'm going to get healthy. I'm going to drop this much weight, whatever it may be. I also, would just want to talk a little bit about sometimes, well, I never want to tell someone to not set New Year's goals because, for some people they start them and that's some motivation and maybe they complete them. But I know statistically, most of us who set goals, especially around weight loss for the new year, will only stick to things. Research tells us on average of 2 weeks. And then most of us will go back to eating the way we always have and maybe even putting on a few more pounds over the year. And so I wanted to talk about, setting this New Year's goal is not always the best idea if you're wanting to lose weight. And mostly because of the reason I just talked about, because many of us kind of set up these really strict plans starting January 1st, and they're just too strict. We don't have the right mindset. We don't know how to keep ourselves accountable. We don't know how to follow through on what we want to do. And so things kind of fall to the wayside. And, so not being super, how do I say this, strict about setting these New Year's goals can kind of help us, Zola, my kitty, jingling away, getting a different mindset around a New Year's goal can be really helpful. So one of the things I want to just offer here real quick is that instead of focusing a lot of your time maybe this week on setting New Year's goals, another idea that I've used over the years, by the way, I never set New Year's goals. I never have. I'm kind of a goal setter anyway. So if I have a goal, I typically just set it whenever in the year. So I've never been a big believer in setting New Year's goals, but I am a big believer in looking back over my past year and just kind of reviewing what has gone on. Did I accomplish the things I wanted to accomplish? Did I feel the feelings I wanted to feel most of the time? What were my relationships like? Did I feel I was engaged? Are there changes I want to make? But this year-end review for me is more like learning from this past year. And learning from this past year then helps me create, this next year in a way that I want to live my life, more of the way that I want to live my life. So that's just one idea. Instead of the focus on setting these New Year goals and resolutions, an idea might be to spend this week looking at your past year in review and maybe just learning and gleaning some things from that. Just a quick interruption here to tell you about a new product I've been using. I recently was sent a couple of products from the Amino Co., the Amino Company. It's abbreviated Amino Co. This company specializes in a few different formulas that are centered around amino acid supplementation. I did a pretty deep dive into the company as well as the research behind their formulas, which is based on some initial research done by NASA. And beyond that, they used many clinical research studies to create their formulations. And amino acids are what build our proteins that make up our tissues and our bodies, as well as they are involved in almost every cellular process within our bodies. I really got into learning about amino acids years ago because they are such a huge part of muscle growth and maintenance. And you all know how big I am on building and maintaining muscle for longevity and staying active and healthy as we age. Most of you also know I'm a huge proponent of protein. And if you are a client of mine, a weight loss client of mine, you are well versed in me harping on you about working to get more protein into your diet on a daily basis. And this is one of the keys that can help you lose weight and keep it off. So protein, which is made up of amino acids, is really, really important. The other issue with amino acids is that we cannot produce all of them in the body that we need. We need to get some of them, and these are called essential amino acids, through our food or supplementation. So if we don't consume these essential amino acids on a regular basis, our bodies lose the ability to create and also maintain muscle mass as well as bone density. And it's really important for both these things as we age. My favorite product of theirs that I tried was the Life supplement. This one is really for those of us who are mostly focused on maintaining as well as still building muscle as we age. In clinical trials, this one showed that it enhanced physical function and muscle strength and supported heart health. I also just really like knowing that along with staying focused on getting in my dietary protein amount, I am also supplementing with the essential amino acids that I want daily for my long-term goals of strength, muscle maintenance, and staying healthy as I age. So since I decided I trusted this product and felt the benefits of this product, and because you are a listener of this podcast, you can try their products for 30% off, which, by the way, is a really big discount amount. You can use my referral link, which is aminoco.com/HH30. Again, that is AMINOCO.com/H, the number 3, the number 0. So go to aminoco.com/HH30, choose your product or products, and at checkout, you can use the discount code, again, HH30, capital H, capital H, 30, for 30% off your entire order. Self-accountability is a really interesting topic because so many of us can do it for quite a while. We can hold ourselves accountable to goals that we've set for ourselves, and we can do it, like on average, I said, for about 2 weeks. And then most of us typically really can't hold ourselves accountable anymore. And we just really go back into old behavioral patterns, habits of the brain. And so holding ourselves accountable breaks down. And if we want to be able to follow through on goals and new habits and patterns, then we really need to be able to hold ourselves accountable. It's kind of that first step. So things that it takes to hold ourselves accountable might mean that over the long run, you really incorporate just a few basic things. The first one being you must really set your goals at a place that you can follow through with them. So they really have to be doable. And what I mean by this is that they need to be really small, very, very doable daily behaviors that you absolutely can follow through on. So they may stretch you like a little bit, they may stretch you a tiny bit, but you can accomplish it. And at the end of this, I'm going to go over some ideas for some very small, doable goals in reference to weight loss. But obviously, this can apply to any goals that you're setting for yourself. Because for any goals, you have to keep yourself accountable to daily new habits and behaviors, and you have to be able to follow through in order to have the long-term effects on changing actual behaviors and getting to your goal, to being able to hit it and keep it. So what I want you to think about is how, our brains change quickly and have much more benefit when we are incorporating things like 3 minutes. Well, this would be an example. So like 3 minutes a day of mindfulness training or meditation versus 90 minutes one day a week. Brain scans show us there's much more beneficial changes within the brain. So 3 minutes a day of mindfulness or meditation is much better and shows quicker growth and change than 90 minutes one day a week. So you see how that works? Like 90 minutes one day a week, you're spending 90 minutes. 3 minutes a day for 7 days, you're spending 21 minutes. So it's really a bigger benefit to do very small time frame, very small doable things to create bigger change. So I want you to think about this and apply it to the goal that you may have where, well, let's talk about an example if you want to start a walking program. So 10 minutes a day of walking is going to benefit you more than 2 hours of walking one day a week. Also, setting it up to where you're doing these small things every single day means you have much more of a chance to be willing and, dare I say it, motivated. I don't like that word, but to be able to follow through on this and create a new behavior pattern, a new habit of the brain. And in order to hit a goal at its very basic level, this is really what needs to happen. There needs to be very small, doable daily goals that we are following through on. And doing this, breaking these down into very tiny, small, doable goals helps us stay accountable to ourselves, because once we can follow through on these things, and because we make them doable, when we can follow through daily, it really does produce these feelings of feeling proud of ourselves, of feeling good about ourselves. And those feelings, so we get willingness there, we get momentum. Those feelings are what help us create these very doable daily habits that then lead into those bigger goals. But beyond that, we get to obtain the goal, but then also keep it, maintain it. So it's just really important to understand you need these small, doable behavior goals on a daily basis. Second concept to understand is that as humans, when we're trying to change, and especially an eating habit or a habit that can bring us pleasure and a big dopamine hit in the moment. That's what eating, drinking, getting a buzz on, that's what that does. We really get this chemical feel-good reaction when we eat or drink. And there's other things that go along with that, but eating is really one of those very primal sort of things that creates that real instantaneous gratification, that instantaneous dopamine hit. And so you really have to get good at not giving in to your excuses. So this is kind of the second idea. I've heard often from clients and also myself, when we're trying to change a habit in the moment, it's really important to be aware of the excuses we tell ourselves and also understand the ways we can use to not give in to our own excuses. So a classic example that many of us can probably relate to would be, not to eat extra snacks after dinner. And all day long, that seems very doable and maybe even easy for some of us. And we're definitely going to do that. We're thinking all these things. But evening comes along, and all of a sudden, all the old behavior patterns are in place. And so things like we sit down to watch TV, and that's where you're used to eating that bowl of ice cream. And even though you're not hungry, and you remind yourself, oh yeah, I'm not hungry, so I'm not eating. But the urge comes over you and it's very powerful. So your brain throws up an excuse like, well, I'm just going to do it tonight and I'll get back on this tomorrow. Or maybe it's like, I'm going to have this tonight and skip breakfast tomorrow. Or maybe there's an excuse like, oh, today really was such a hard day today. And so I deserve this. And so I'm going to have it. So these are the same excuses and justifications that come up. So recognizing, being aware when your brain throws these up at you, it's really important, because unless you're aware they're happening, you don't really have a chance in that moment to shift your thinking in order to shift your feelings, in order to shift your behavior. Remember, again, it goes, you have a thought, you have a feeling, typically creates a behavior. There are nuances around that, but for us right now, for our purposes of behavior change, that's really what you need to focus on: thoughts, feelings, behaviors. You really need to be aware of the thoughts, of the excuses, of the justifications that come up for you, because at least being aware of them gives you half a shot of being able to maybe not follow through on the urge or the behavior. So again, being very aware of what your excuses or justifications are, your common ones. All that self-accountability really requires is really shoring up your commitment to your goal and your commitment and willingness to the actions required on a daily basis to move you to that goal. So you have to be willing also to risk making mistakes. I think a lot of people get started because they're enthusiastic and motivated, but after about 2 weeks, that enthusiasm and motivation wanes, and that's where willingness has to come into play. That feeling of willingness, because motivation comes and goes. You really cannot rely on motivation to make changes, but willingness is something you can cultivate. And when you are willing, you can follow through on things. But being willing also means being willing to make mistakes, because you're gonna make mistakes. We all make mistakes. We all do. And that's what happens when we set up these perfect plans for ourselves and a few days we're going to screw it up, but being willing in those moments to mess it up and not get into a whole shame cycle about messing it up, and instead moving into willingness so that you're able to move on and continue on with your goals, your behavior goals. It's one of the ways to permanent behavior change, to permanent goal attainment. Willingness after you make a mistake, willingness to make mistakes, willingness to work on not feeling shame after mistakes. It really is what moves you more quickly into your next best decision. So if we're talking about food, the example would be, you overeat one night, and if you're really ashamed of that and beat yourself up over it, guess what you're probably going to do the next day? You're probably going to overeat again because you're dealing with all these terrible feelings of shame and disappointment, and you're really hard on yourself and beating yourself up about it. And you don't want to feel it. Your brain doesn't want to feel those things. So it's going to throw up lots and lots of urges to eat. And so more than likely you will overeat again. So the idea here is to be willing to make mistakes so that you don't get into that whole shame cycle. And instead you are just willing to make the mistake. And once it's made, you're going to learn from it and you're going to move on. You're going to make your next best decision in regards to food. And that is really what gets you to your weight loss goal. That is what gets you being able to maintain yourself at a healthy weight and where you want to be. I want you to think about this before you make a plan for weight loss this week. Before you decide you're going to go keto or no sugar, no flour, or you're going to be paleo, or you're going to do some crazy juice cleanse for a week starting January 1st, or before you decide, I'm just going to say it, that you're going to sign up with a coach or some program or something like that, before you do all of that, you really want to have your commitment established. You need to get into a place of commitment before you even choose a plan. Remember that for those of us who overeat or overdrink, there's typically two things going on. We're trying to create a feeling, so like a feeling of relaxation or relief or joy, or we're trying to not feel a feeling. We're trying to check out for a moment, or we're trying to numb or distract through eating so that we're not feeling anxious or we're not feeling stressed. And so we use food or drink to do this, to create an emotion or to check out of emotion, instead of doing this through our brain or our mind. We all do have the capability to create new emotions through our way of thinking, through our brain. And although this is a skill and it does take a little bit of time and practice to learn, but it's such a better way than trying to create an emotion of relief or relaxation or numb an emotion through food or over drinking, or honestly, whatever habit or thing we use to change our feelings. The thing is that overeating, over drinking to change these things really creates such consequences. Our health, not feeling good in our bodies, all those things. So the brain is a much better way to go. The brain and learning how to think thoughts to create those feelings on our own, or use behaviors to create those feelings, and also learning how to tolerate, how to sit through, how to accept and allow uncomfortable emotions. Both sides of that, creating the positive emotions through our thoughts and also allowing uncomfortable emotions and learning how to be okay to sit through them. All those things we can do through our brain, and it really is what keeps us from a place of using substances to change those feelings. So commitment and willingness has to come first. Those things need to come before you choose some plan or way of eating to start the new year. When you have a goal and when you're ready to commit, you have to think exactly about what you're committing to. You need to think about when you commit to something, you're agreeing to start learning new things. You are agreeing to learn how to cultivate determination and willingness. You are agreeing to learn to sit with discomfort and uncomfortable feelings. So this is where you really have to decide, am I all in? Am I willing to feel the discomfort I'm going to feel when I want to overeat and I decide not to? Am I willing to feel the discomfort I'm going to feel when I typically would overeat to bring me joy or to change a feeling state I'm experiencing, like anxiety or tiredness? To be accountable to yourself is to have a very clearly defined sentences, ideas about what your commitment level is. And this really is what helps bring clarity to your brain as to what is going to happen. And that is what helps get your brain on board with this commitment. And you know as well as I do, when you have a goal, you need your brain on board with you, because otherwise it is going to work against you at every possible moment when you are trying to change a new behavior, when you're trying to implement a new behavior to eventually hit a goal that you have set for yourself. So if I'm going to want to eat and I am self-accountable and staying committed, I will need to have a plan in place for that moment. So I am willing to feel uncomfortable. Next, from that, these are your practical strategies, by the way. Write out what you can do during that moment of uncomfortableness. Write out what you will think in that moment to help you feel a little less uncomfortable, or to just move you through the uncomfortableness a little bit quicker and less intensely. So your sentence might look something like this. When I feel uncomfortable in that moment, like in the evening when I want to overeat and I choose not to, I'm going to recognize my feeling and name it. I am feeling uncomfortable. I will then tell myself it's okay that I'm feeling uncomfortable, and I'm working on creating a new habit so I can feel less uncomfortable in the future. Or it could be something as simple as, I'm feeling really uncomfortable now, and that's okay. I'm going to be okay. So sometimes just giving your brain a sentence, telling your brain it's going to be okay, is going to help take that uncomfortable feeling down a notch. It's just going to help lessen the intensity, which then can help you stay accountable to yourself and committed to not eating when you're not hungry in the evening, or whenever, not eating whenever you're not hungry. Another behavioral strategy in this moment is to have a list of behavioral things you can do to help lessen the uncomfortableness. But, the behavioral things that you're going to write down that you think you could do instead of eating need to be pleasurable. These can't be things like, I'm going to clean for a while when I want to eat. That's not going to work for your brain. You need something that is at least somewhat enjoyable. Remember, eating, drinking, it gives that immediate dopamine response, that immediate neurochemical cocktail that makes you feel really good. So if you're going to replace that with another behavior, it needs to be something that is somewhat enjoyable. So just some, just some ideas might be for a lot of clients. I know they use things like this, like, a hot bath, hot shower, maybe just allowing yourself a little time to yourself, or even just to relax on the couch and watch Netflix or a movie, just something that is somewhat enjoyable to you. Nobody loses weight or gets into a better state of health without changing habits. And changing habits is definitely uncomfortable. And at any moment, there are going to be many moments where it's really imperative to remind yourself of what your goal is and why. And beyond all these things, the most important part is to practice, is to really practice the sentences for yourself. Write them out daily, put them on note cards, read them over and over daily. It's really important to keep yourself practicing these thoughts and practicing the new behaviors daily, in order to keep yourself accountable to yourself and follow through on your goals. It really is the quickest way to keeping yourself accountable. And, obviously I'm going to mention here, because this is my job, but you can do what I've done in the past myself and what my clients do, and that is work with someone to help keep you accountable until you can keep yourself accountable. Some of us at different times in our lives may need some help. I definitely have, and need someone else who can give us the sentences, the thoughts that we need to be practicing, can help encourage us, can keep checking in on us to keep reminding us of what we're trying to do, what our goals are, and the why. Some of us need someone else to help talk through some of the things that we're dealing with, the difficult times when we're not being accountable to ourselves, but where we would still want to maintain or work through these things to hit the goals that we have set for ourselves. So that would be my last little bit of advice here, is just to, if you're finding you cannot keep yourself accountable, working with someone to help you keep accountable for a while until you can get there can be really, really beneficial. I have found it really beneficial. I know my clients have found it beneficial. And I just think, it's something for those of us who like to do everything on our own. Sometimes it's good to be reminded that sometimes we do need help from other human beings out there, and that can be really beneficial. So if you found anything useful from this episode, would you please take the time to subscribe to the podcast and also give a 5-star review if you feel it's warranted. And when you subscribe, you will be sure to get the newest episode once they're released. And all of it helps me keep these episodes going. I really appreciate you supporting this podcast and for sharing this space with me, for listening. And remember to thank your own self for being willing to consider making small changes in your life to get you closer to your goals and dreams. You can head over to my social media for just way more resources. You can find me on Instagram, Heinen Counseling and Coaching. Once there, please feel free to DM me, get me messages, whatever it is, if you have questions. I do actually have a few questions that I've received from some listeners. I've answered a few of them in previous episodes, but getting ready to record a few more where I will be answering some of those. But feel free to drop me any questions you might have. I have a recipes only page on Instagram at Peak Protein Recipes, and these are all foods or all recipes, I should say, with higher protein or at the very minimum, lower carb, no sugar. So if you're looking for a one-stop shop for some ideas for food and higher protein sources, go check that out, Peak Protein Recipes. And if you keep listening right now, you're going to get some more information on how my clients take a deeper dive on these topics with me through online programs and coaching. It is where you get the actual structured lessons, worksheets, journal prompts, support, and coaching behind all this information I'm putting out there to lose your weight for good, improve your health, and live the life you've been dreaming about in the body you've been dreaming about. Happy holidays, everybody. I hope you are finding something useful from these episodes and this podcast. And if so, please share it with someone else in your life you feel it could benefit. This podcast is also now monetized. So if you really feel you are getting a lot from it and want to help keep it going, please go to the episode show notes. You can just scroll down from wherever you're listening. You'll see a description of the episode, and then you will see it says support this podcast. And then there's a link you can click on. You can click on that link, and that's where you can support the podcast. Even the smallest donation, like 99 cents, helps to keep me producing the podcast. And to those of you who have donated, I really, really appreciate the support. I really do appreciate all of you listening and sharing the space with me. Again, just very thankful for all of you. Did you know you can find a lot more help from me on my website? Go to heatherheinen.com. Heinen is spelled Heynen, and get in touch with questions on all things I offer, like online courses for overeating, weight loss, goal attainment, and also my coaching and counseling services.